Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session. Today, we're going to speak about how to overcome a low GMAT or GRE score. My name is Shimri Winters. You have my details here if you want. Just a bit about me. I have a computer science degree. I worked as a programmer for a couple of years. I did my MBA at the London Business School. When I graduated, I was asked to be on the interviewing committee, and I interviewed about 50 candidates to London Business School. After my MBA, I worked in consulting. Then I moved to some IT companies in business development roles. And I've been at ARINGO for 7 years full time. This is what I do. And that's it. So like I said, this session is all about how to overcome a low GMAT score. This is my only marketing slide. What does ARINGO do? We're very good. We help candidates get into top MBAs. We help candidates with low GMAT scores. That's our specialty. And that was my marketing slide. I'm a very marketing person. Now, at the side here of our YouTube, you can start writing questions. I'll try not to address them as we go along this session, but I will try and address everything at the end. So the more questions you ask, the more questions we can go through. So let's just try and set a little agenda. So before we go into how to overcome a low GMAT score, which is the topic of this session, I think we need at least 10 minutes for kind of leveling up everybody on this session. Just what is a top 10 MBA? Why do a top 10 MBA? Where do you go and study a top 10 MBA? So what is a MBA? It's good. So pretty much where, why, how do you choose between MBA programs? What does it mean to apply to a top MBA? So I think we all need that. Again, I'm going to talk very quickly to rush through the basics because I think most of you should know these things if you came to this session. Then we can start talking about what is the average GMAT score. And if you have a lower than average GMAT score, then we can start looking for how to overcome this low GMAT score. And what I'll do, I'll actually share with you 7 foundations of an application and my 7 views of an experience of how to overcome a lower GMAT. By the way, when I say I keep referring to low GMAT, GMAT, we'll discuss this, or GRE, same, or even GPA. So this means how to overcome one element which is lower than the school's averages. Okay, you can start writing your questions in the chat, and I'm continuing with the presentation. Let's go. So, okay, so we said 10 minutes very quickly about the basics. Why do you even want to do a top 10 MBA? Well, most candidates that I talk to and I work with, I would say they're career switchers. They're very successful accountants or very successful lawyers, but they want to work, they want to lead business processes and not just advise business processes on legal or tax issues. So they want to lead the business issues. They're programmers who want to be program managers. They're bankers who want to work in private equity. Okay, so this is some kind of career switching. Nevertheless, I do still see, I don't know if it's 10 or 15% of my candidates that are accelerators. That means they work in an industry and in a job that they like, but they want to get an edge on their peers. And then if they go and do a top 10 MBA, they can get this, edge on their peers, okay? And then it can even come back to the same workplace or to the same industry, but obviously to, more senior positions and higher paying positions. I do see a lot of future entrepreneurs, okay? And when I say future entrepreneurs, I mean people that don't actually have an idea today of where they want to go and or what they want to do. But they know that they want to be entrepreneurs. They might want to be CEOs or might want to found their own company or be co-founders, but they still don't exactly know how. They don't have the capabilities, and they want a very wide degree of marketing, economics, strategy, entrepreneurship, communication skills, and all the things that an MBA really gives. I just kind of put academia in red. I'm not sure an MBA leads to a PhD in the easiest way. There's much easier ways to do a PhD and then to go and work in the academy, in academia. So, just think about that. Usually MBAs don't lead to that. So I'm not sure that's what you need. Again, why do an MBA? Very good, top MBA, very good salaries at the end. And like we said, it's very good for career switching. If you're an international applicant, the MBA will be abroad, whether that be the US or England or France or Singapore or India or wherever. And, it's a very nice, interesting, fun, mind-blowing 1 or 2 years of experience. And obviously after that, you also have opportunities to, continue working abroad. This is just very quickly, just a slide I took 2 years ago from London Business School. And you can see the vast amount of recruiters. This year, this was 2 years ago, over 300 companies came to London Business School. I think there were less than 500 full-time MBA students. So, and some of these companies had more than one position. So you can understand there's a lot of work for, post-MBA in nearly any industry, have it be consulting, venture capital, strategy, marketing, you have it, technology, of course, and everything else, book publishing. There's companies here that represent them, Burger King, so nearly every company. So there's a lot of on-campus recruitment. Okay, so that's a bit about, why do a top MBA? And, okay, so what are the top MBAs? That's a good question. And then people a lot of times refer me to MBA rankings. And randomly, first page on Google, if you put MBA rankings, I just found 5 MBA rankings. There's actually a lot more. So the problem with these rankings are they're not identical. Big problem. So every school, every ranking will have different schools on the list. And what will happen is there's actually more than 10 top 10 universities. Okay, just in the US, I think I counted 17 last time. And that's if I look at all the top 10s in 5 or 6 different rankings. I just mentioned here 15. And I think most of you will actually know most of these schools because a lot of them, or all of them actually, are big in everything. And I know nothing about learning to be a dentist. I'm sure University of Pennsylvania are very good at that. I'm sure Cornell are very good at journalism. Okay, so these top schools are usually top in everything as well as in the MBAs. If I look at Europe, the situation actually is different. Most of the schools only do business or very close to business related things like NCAD or London Business School, who will only have master in finance, master in management, and MBAs, and a few other things in that kind of area degrees. So these are very little schools. On the other hand, there is Cambridge and Oxford. I agree that has a bit of everything, like the big American schools, but the other schools will be smaller. And again, there's a lot of top MBAs. Whoever's joining now this session, I just wanted a quick reminder. This session is all about how to overcome a low GMAT score. And the first 10 minutes of the session, we've done 7. Just some ground basics, just that we're all on the same page about what is a top MBA, why do a top MBA, what does it take to apply to a top MBA. Just a few differences in between, mainly between US and Europe. The European programs are shorter, there's more international candidates, and the smaller schools. Okay, how do you decide between the schools? So a lot of people tell me, I only want a very specific school. And here I put some myths. Okay, so if you want, you can write in the chat or just shout out loudly. I'll hear. Question number 1. Last year, where were the highest paid alumni? That means after which school were the students, or actually the alumni, paid the most? I'll do 3. Okay. I can't see anyone writing in the chat, so start writing. Well, a lot of people answer usually Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, NCAD. Actually, last year the answer was MIT. Okay, wow! It was the average salary of 160 people that were on this poll was $100 more than in Harvard. Who cares? It's exactly the same. Okay, so this is just what I'm trying to say is the top schools are all top. You'll usually get to the same positions. You'll study the same things. And you don't have to be fixated. I just want to study in Columbia. If I don't go to Columbia, it's not worth it. Columbia is a great school, but Wharton, Kellogg, Chicago, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, UCLA and Yale are also great schools. Okay. Another myth. Okay, what's the highest ranked program in Europe? So In this specific poll that I think the Financial Times did, London Business School was the highest, and the second was HEC Paris. Okay, because they took INSEAD out, because I think INSEAD was also Asian, also in Singapore. Is HEC better than Oxford? In some rankings, yes. Also, it's higher ranked, and in some rankings, no. All this means is there's a lot of top schools. I definitely want to encourage you to go to a top 10 school, but just know there's quite a lot of top 10 schools. Okay. Last myth, okay, just, to check what you think. Where would the MBA interns pay the most? So was it Stanford, Harvard, MIT, Columbia? Actually, last year, surprise, surprise, I think it was NYU. Yeah, it was NYU. And why? Because a lot of the internships were in New York. Makes sense. Salaries are a bit higher in New York than in Chicago. Okay, so what I'm saying is there's a lot of myths around, where should I study? I only want this place because only there it will be worth my while. And check out average salaries. Check out where people go and work. A lot of times in top MBAs, very, very similar. Okay, that was just a side thing. How do you decide where to go and study? Well, I think the first criteria should be location. There's no point going to study in the best school in Europe if your dream is to work afterwards in the US. There's no point going to study in Asia if you don't want to be involved with Asia afterwards in your professional career. Okay, so think about the location. You also need to live there during your degree, and there's a high chance that you might want to stay after your degree. So think about the location. Definitely then I would look at ranking. I think that's important. And then school specializations. Okay, so I'm assuming there's more green energy companies in California than there are in North Carolina. Okay, so that can be location, but that can also be, what does the school specialize in? And then there's some other factors. Okay, so with one slide before the actual topic, which is how do you overcome a low GMAT? So what do you need to apply? Well, when applying to school, it really is long. And you need, obviously, your prerequisites, which will be a GMAT and a TOEFL if English is not your first language. And you probably need an undergraduate degree for most of the schools and to pay some registration fee. If you have all that, then the application is basically a resume, a CV, a lot of essays. Some of the schools like INSEAD have 7 essays, and usually 2 recommendations, which are professional recommendations. There's also the online application in a lot of schools, London Business School, Chicago, Booth. The online application is very, very long, so pay attention to that as well. It takes a long time. We usually work 3 or 4 months with candidates on a number of schools. Okay, now we're getting close to the topic, and you can start asking questions. I'm, before we discuss how to overcome a low GMAT score, let's see what the average GMAT scores are. Now, this is amazing because I sat on this yesterday or something, and I have a list of the GMATs. So I said, I'll just look on it on Google a bit on the school sites. Every site I looked at, I found, even in the school's pages, I found different statistics. So, I'm going to mention some school averages, but please, if I mention LBS is 707 points, and someone found that it's 708, I don't know, argue, you're right. There's just a lot of statistics, okay? But I'm pretty, I'm pretty there. I'm pretty much there. So if I look at the top 10 schools in the US, the average GMAT score is usually around 730, okay? If I look at all the top schools, we're around 730. Stanford can be even above 730, and that's the average. If I look at the US top 20 schools, here there's the vary ranges quite a lot. There are schools which are around 710. There are schools which are around 690. Again, let's just say it's 700 for the sake of the matter. And also top 30 schools. The GMAT doesn't go much lower. I've seen schools with 680 as a GMAT average, but the top 30 school doesn't go much lower than a 680. This means if you're not in the 700 range for a even top 30 school, you're below average, and this presentation is important for you because you need to find ways to overcome your lower than average GMAT score. Second thing with same thing with top EU schools. If I look at LBS and INSEAD, we're around the 710. If I look at Oxford, Cambridge, HEC, IESE, Barcelona, IE, ISADE, these schools, IMD, we're around 680, 690. So again, you're probably aiming for 700 and above. And if not, then you need to overcome this challenge. Okay, now I can see you starting to write questions, because now we're getting into the topic. Keep writing them. I will address them at the end of this presentation. And we're getting now finally to the topic. I just did want to address the GRE and also the GPA. Regarding GRE, the GRE really, really varies. It's actually a surprise, because when I look at the GMAT averages for the top schools are very similar. But then when I look at the GRE, I can see very big differences. I've seen Stanford. I think Stanford was around 165, which is 330. Whoever does GRE understands that. But I've also seen top schools which said 162, so 324. I think the main reason is still GMAT is dominating most of the applications. And I think, some schools, it can be 90% applicants with GMAT. Some schools, it'll be 85%. Second thing is most international candidates will still be taking the GMAT. And sometimes there's a factor, if you come from an overrepresented background, your GMAT needs to be higher. And the GRE, they might be a bit more patient, and there might be more Americans or more or less candidates. And that's why they usually, there's more of a flow of GRE scores. Still, look at the school average. And if your GRE is much lower than the school average, 1 or 2 points or 3 points below the average, you need to overcome this gap somehow. If I look at GPAs again, it varies. I kind of put here averages. But basically, you need a very good GPA, sorry, and they will look at your GPA, okay? So if your GPA is below, top whatever system you were in, but let's say below top 10% of your class, you probably need to explain that somewhere. Okay, so it took 15 minutes, but now we're in the topic of how to overcome a low GMAT, GPA, GRE. Okay, so I'm going to give you 7 big tips to look at, or 7 areas in your application that I want you to look at. But I just want you to remember, GMAT is not, and when I say GMAT or GRE or GPA, it's not the only factor. Most schools, I would say the GMAT or the GRE are about 30% of your 100% application. GPA and your undergraduate degree can be another 10%. That means there's still another 60% or 60 points that you can express yourself. And if those are amazing, and you get 60 out of 60, but you only get 20 out of 40 in your GMAT and GPA, that's still a very, very good score. So it's not the only consideration, okay? And I wrote here, your work experience and your extracurricular activities and who you are as a person and what did your recommenders say. And there's so many other factors, which all will be expressed in your application. So without further ado, let's talk about what the school's looking for, and then how can you, show that the low GMAT doesn't represent you and you can overcome that. So schools are looking for a lot of things, and this is so important for me to express. Okay, so I put here in purple, I hope your colors are the same, but on the right in purple, academics. And academics are important, but we said the GMAT and the undergraduate degree and everything together is 40% out of the 100. Important, but there's other factors. For example, do you have vision? Why MBA? Why now? What are your career goals? Things like that. I'm going clockwise. Red, school motivation. Are you interested in their specific school? Do you have a reason that you want to study at Duke? Oh, you're interested in healthcare. That's interesting because Duke have a healthcare specialization. Okay, and so on and so on. Leadership. Do you have any managerial experience? Have you shown leadership in your extracurricular activity? International exposure. Have you worked abroad? Have you worked with teams abroad? Broad horizons. Okay, so, are you interesting? Not just academics and professional. Do you have interesting stuff? And obviously, if you're smart, etc. So schools are looking for a lot of things. Okay, now how can you overcome the low GMAT and the low GPA or GRE? Fine. The way to do it is, again, there's things that you need to report to the school. You have your CV, your essays, the letters of recommendation, and the online application. Now let me give you some tips about that. Okay, so it took 20 minutes, I'm sorry, but we've reached where we wanted to reach, okay? What we want to do is for me to give you some tips on how to overcome low GMATs okay? And the way to do it is through the application. And the first most important element in your application is your CV, okay? Now, my mother thinks I'm very special. She doesn't have any proof, but she thinks I'm special. That won't be good enough, okay? Your CV has to, I have to read it and say, wow, this girl is amazing. This is the first document when I used to be a London Business School interviewer. I used to get a packet of 40 pages about the people I used to interview. Page number 1 had a few stats: GMAT, GPA, TOEFL score, name. Page number 2, the CV. Okay, very, very important. Now, everything is important in the CV. And I see so many mistakes in this area, and I'll give you some examples. Consultant at IBM. Okay, yes, I happen to know what IBM is, but not everybody understands that you mean that you work in IBM consulting in the defense industry with defense industry clients, or that you work at PwC audit department and you audit pharma company. So first of all, it's really important to explain, to put me in place. Where do you work? What does your company do? Even if you work at, I don't know what the most famous company is, Coca-Cola. Explain, okay? Food and beverage company worth $100 trillion, okay? And then don't tell me what you do, okay? I used to be a computer programmer. My CV probably said knows Java and C++, but my MBA CV talked all about my accomplishments, okay? I worked in a project worth $2 million. I led a team of 3. I accomplished the project, on budget and 5 days earlier. Okay, so it's all about accomplishments. And there's a little example here about a lawyer, very short and very, to the point. Okay, so that's the CV. Okay, and I like to call it MBA talk. Okay, it's very short, bullets, a lot of accomplishments. Okay, so if you remember, I ran through it very quickly. Now we can talk slowly because this is the topic, how to overcome a low GMAT. And the schools look for vision. Okay, why do you want an MBA? And nearly every school will ask you, why MBA? Why now? And what are your short-term, long-term career goals? So how do you find your career goals? First of all, it's fine to close your eyes and imagine your dream career. Let me close my eyes. Okay, I want to be a yoga instructor. That won't happen. I want to be CEO of Google. Okay, that's my dream. Now I'm opening my eyes. Okay, you know what? Then I'll close them again and I'll think of my second. Okay, maybe I jumped a bit too high, but I want to be a VP in a telecoms company. Okay, so one of those. So I've chosen 2 directions. Now let's think, how can I connect my past? I used to be a programmer in a telecoms company. So, I know a bit about telecoms and I know about IT and about computers and about hardware and software. So I have a bit of knowledge. And now if I do the MBA and learn a lot of business skills and then go and work as a program manager a few years for Google, I will have, that knowledge. Okay, so what I did was imagine the end game, where I want to be in 20 years. Imagine the, I thought about the past, connected it to the MBA, connected it to my short-term career goal. So it has to be something ambitious, but something realistic. Now, all these factors will help to overcome the low GMAT. Why? What's the connection? Because although I have a low GMAT, by the way, my GMAT is 660, and I got into London Business School. I forgot to mention that. So although I have a low GMAT, my connection and the story I'm telling is very compulsing because it's great. I used to be a programmer in a telecom company. I've already led people. I want the MBA because I want to learn more about business. Post MBA, I want to go into program management to learn more about business roles. And then I might want to be VP of program management and then maybe open my own company. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And when the school will say, well, his GMAT isn't so good, this is a very solid candidate and his story is very, very good. Okay, now you might remember the schools are looking for interest in the school. You can't now take INSEAD and copy INSEAD's essay into Harvard. No, 2 different schools. How can you know more about the school? network, find people from the school, okay? You can look on the school website, read a lot there. There's lots of clubs. Contact some of the club members. Contact the clubs that interest you. For example, if you're in pharma, contact the healthcare club. If you're in consulting, the same. Go to MBA fairs, okay? There's lots of online fairs now, very easy. On the ARINGO website, we have a whole page for international events. Most of them are online today. Go on ARINGO, just type ARINGO events, you'll find it. Type Harvard, you can find 50 next webinars for Harvard. Obviously visit campuses if you can, a bit difficult these days, but you know. So do a lot of networking. It's important because you will find things about the school. You'll find out things about the school. Plus you can mention this networking that you've done in your essays, in your online application. After speaking to Shimri Winters, MBA 2005, he suggested I go to the telecoms club and help manage the events. This shows the school that you're really interested in NCR. You just have 670, but you're a solid candidate, you have good career goals, you're really interested in the school. Let's give you a chance. Okay, and these things work. Okay, now we come to the long part, especially at NCR, the essays. Okay, the first thing is actually silly, but what's the second one here? Silly, but important. First of all, make sure you answer the questions. I've seen so many essays that are amazing, but they just don't answer the question. And by the way, usually that indicates to me that this person is copying and pasting an essay from somewhere else. So strategize for each essay. What am I going to write? What am I going to convey to the schools? This is what I want to tell the schools. And then make sure you answer the question. Okay? Don't go too outside of the questions. Okay? Even if you really want to say something, you have to answer the question. Now, it's very important to stay modest. Okay? MBAs, I know it's all about, showing I've led 5 people, I'm the best, my manager says I'm the best, fast track promotions. Still, you have to be very modest. Let the facts talk for you, okay? And if you're the best in your team, easy. Just state in the essay, I had a fast track promotion. I think that means you're the best in your team. If your recommender will say, we'll go to recommendation soon, but if he says you're the best in his team, that will prove it. You don't need to say it again and again, okay? So the essays are the most important factor. CV is actually probably also important, but the essays are the longest. Some schools, like we said, NCR has 7 essays. Stanford this year with the optional essays has 5 essays altogether. A lot of space to express yourself. And this is where you can score good points and overcome a low GMAT. Okay, recommendations. So like I said, most of the schools, Cambridge, I think Michigan Ross asked for 1, some others as well, but most of the schools will ask for 2 recommenders. Usually the recommendations are, it's best to bring professional recommendations, preferably your direct manager. Sometimes that's not possible, and we can discuss that as well. But the recommendations should be very subjective, and they can go already very personal. Unlike what you could have done in your CV and essays, they can say, Shimri, he's the best. I've worked with 5 people. He's proven, he's the best out of everyone. So this can be very subjective already. And this can not just give facts, this can just say what the recommender thinks about you. It's very important to choose recommenders who can give this kind of feedback. It's very important to choose recommenders who understand what a recommendation, what's needed in a recommendation. Some recommendations can be 2,000 words and more. London Business School, if I remember correctly, has 5 open questions to your closed, but questions to your recommender, and they're 500 words each. So this can be, over 2,000 words. Your recommender will have to answer the questions. How is the candidate better than his peers? 500 words. And he can't just say, oh, he's better because he's more analytical. No, I want to hear now an example and details. Now, a strong recommendation can definitely help the school who's factoring all the other factors. Well, GMAT wasn't so good. Good CV. Essays were okay. These are the best recommendations I've ever seen. Okay, so this is another factor when admissions or when an interviewer is looking through your application that can help overcome worries that the admissions may have. For example, is he academic enough? And then your recommender says he actually learned by himself a whole new area and a whole new skill set and a programming language on his own. He's an autodidact. And your interviewer or admissions will read this and say, wow, why was I worried about his academics? This guy can study, he's fine. Okay, tip number 6 out of our 7 of how to overcome a low GMAT. So remember, schools are looking for 3 things, and generally they're looking at your academics, they're looking at your professional experience, and they're looking for everything else. Don't be a dry biscuit, or I need a different expression for that. Don't just be academic and professional. When I interviewed for London Business School, I interviewed 2 candidates with 780 GMAT. That's a fantastic GMAT. One of them had a very good professional experience. The other didn't. The one with the very good professional experience didn't have any volunteering, didn't have any hobbies. All he's done in his life is study and work. That's fantastic. But when I thought, would I want this guy in my class? The answer was no. The answer is he's going to get great scores, but he didn't seem like someone I would like to work with on a day-to-day basis. He didn't seem like someone that would add me much value in my study group. And actually the guy with the 780, okay, fantastic score, with a less impressive professional experience, the reason he had the less professional experience was less good was he actually volunteered somewhere for 4 years straight. He led some kind of organization. It was amazing. And he explained to me why he was doing this. And he had a very good roundup story around everything. So great, 780, that's, so what? And I've had the same thing. Remember, I have a 660. I've had the same thing with people with low GMATs that brought to me a very nice story. By the way, bottom line, the 780 didn't get in, and the 780 with the good story got in, yeah? So I've had the same thing with 660s, 670s. I had this year a 630 get into NCAD. Same thing exactly. He had a very good, compelling story. Now, this is rare, okay? If you have a 630, go and do another GMAT. That's a low score for NCAD. But it's not, if it's your 6th GMAT and you can't get a higher score and you have a very good story to tell, it's definitely worth trying, okay? And extracurricular activities is a great place to show it. I had the 710 this year that got a full scholarship for Chicago Booth, 710. She was in a Big Four, I won't mention the name, but a Big Four Big Four accounting firm. She was in audit, quite boring, but she also was in a beach volleyball team. And a lot of her essays and material were about beach volleyball. And that made a big difference for her to get into Chicago Booth with 710 and to get a full scholarship. Okay, because she was a very interesting person. Now, if you're not an interesting person, I don't play volleyball. You must have some hobbies you would like to share with the school. If you don't have any hobbies, you don't volunteer anywhere, and you still have 2 or 3 years for your MBA, I would definitely think about your extracurricular activities. This is really key and can help overcome a different problem in your application, like a low GMAT. And my last tip, in recent years, or probably in quite a lot of recent years, before I invite someone for an interview, I Google them, okay? So Google yourself. And this sounds strange, but a lot of times I was debating what to do about someone, I Googled them, and I've seen some really bad things in some people's social media. I think Facebook is fine. I think Facebook is okay. It's, it's known that it's a more private and personal platform. Still, be careful what you write there. I don't want to say something too extensive here, but if there's some kind of racist statement in your profile or some kind of picture which is concerning in any way, okay, just change that very quickly, okay? And I actually had a funny story now. I did an interview prep with someone, and it was a few days before their interview with Oxford. Now, most schools this year did a Zoom or a Google Meet or Hangouts or whatever interview. They didn't do a face-to-face interview. And this guy was interviewing for Oxford. Oxford used Skype. Okay, good for them. And I did with him a prep over Skype. and he had a very inappropriate picture on Skype. I mean, he was on a boat with his Speedos. I mean, I'm sure it was a nice picture, but it's not a professional picture. And I know Oxford are going to check, talk to him on Skype, and are going to see this profile picture. So I know it sounds strange. Google yourself. LinkedIn should be completely correlated one-to-one to what your CV says. Okay, if your CV says you're at McKinsey and your LinkedIn says Coca-Cola, I'm already not sure I'm going to invite you for an interview. This is a problem. So it has to be aligned, it has to be correlated, it has to be professional, at least on LinkedIn. And again, just check that everything's appropriate. Now, all these factors, having a great CV, having great essays, doing a lot of school research, recommendations, extracurricular, having a nice online presence, all these factors will help overcome a low GMAT or GRE or GPA. So those are my 7 tips. And that's it. How can ARINGO help you? Well, again, we're very good. We mainly work with people with low GMAT scores. We help with everything end-to-end, school strategizing till interview preps and everything in the middle. So check us out on aringo.com or reach out to me if you want something specific. And now, I was trying to talk very quickly, so we have a lot of time to try and answer questions. So I'm actually going to go now on the chat and see all your comments. I'm going one by one. So if someone wants to write now more questions, they can. If someone wants to drop off, I hope you enjoyed this session. I did. I tried to talk quickly, but there was a lot of material. So first question, okay? Very good question, which is, would an additional master's before my MBA help to overcome a low GMAT or GPA? The answer is yes. I actually get this question a lot when people ask me how to overcome a very low GPA. And if it's a very low GPA and you can and want to do another degree and you can get a good score in that will overcome it. And also will overcome a low GMAT or GRE, okay? Because a GMAT or GRE or GPA show your academics. And if you now do a master's, which is another degree, which is a tough degree, and you get a good GPA there, that can help. So Cheryl, good question. I like that. Okay. So someone asked me about the factors in the GMAT. So as you know, there's or you probably know, there's the verbal, which is English, and there's the math section, the quant section. Okay, now these 2 sections will make your GMAT score. So when I was talking about 700, these are the 2 sections. There are 2 other sections, and there's the integrated reasoning, and there's the AWA. In these sections, it's not that important if you scored 6 or 7 or 8. Most schools will actually just look for minimum 4. Okay, so these are less important. What's more important is the GMAT total score. Another question that I get quite often is the split. Does the split matter? So I got yesterday I spoke to someone, he got a 51 quant. So he's a genius in quant. His verbal wasn't so good. Okay. But the total score, he improved from his previous GMAT that was a bit more balanced. He improved it in 10 points. And my answer to him was, yes, this is still good. Most schools will look at the total score and only then will say, well, and his English isn't so good. So first of all, concentrate on the total score. And again, when you get to 700, etc., you probably will have both a good verbal and a good quant because it's a good score already. But most schools will look at the total score. Still, some schools will look a lot at the quantitative score. Some schools like NCAD will actually mention, and HEC Paris, that they want a balanced GMAT. They want that you'll be above the 75% range in both of these scores, or above the 80% range, depends which school. So that's also important. But again, the most important thing is get the high score, and we'll take it from there. So someone's asking me about the 325 GRE. Remember, the GREs are more varied, and definitely a 325 GRE is not a low score for a top 20 US school. I think you saw the averages. You're probably above average for most schools. And again, even if you're on average, it doesn't really matter 1 point here or there. Now what matters is, use all my tips and overcome your low GMAT with a very, very strong CV, very strong recommendations, essays, etc. Okay, someone's saying he has a 760 GMAT. I don't know what the question is, but well done. CFA, very, very good question. So CFA Pro, you get 2 points from me. Yes, okay, so CFA exams are probably one of the most difficult exams out there. And if you have CFA certifications, yes, that definitely shows that you're someone who can sit on your butt and can study a lot. So it shows you're very academic. It can overcome a low GMAT. Again, when I say overcoming a low GMAT, I'm talking about 40, 50 points below average, up to 40 or 50 points below average. If you're applying to Harvard with a 600 and a CFA, your chances are very, very low, okay? But if you have a 700 and the school average is 730, I guarantee that they'll open your application. Now let's see what's in there. And the CFA would actually help. So I love that question and very good. Okay, I'm still going through your questions. I can see all the myths. Sorry that I got some of you confused with the myths. So there's a very good question which I don't even know how to answer. Do schools actually care about GMAT? Okay, of course they care about GMAT. Okay, because schools don't tell them, care about one thing. They care about the rankings. They want to be very high in the rankings. And having a very high average GMAT score is very good, in the rankings. It makes the school more prestigious. And although, it makes it harder to get in and more people will say, oh, that's an amazing school. Do you see the high GMAT, etc. So they care about the GMAT, yes. Now, when they look at your specific application, like I said, it can be, a bit higher, a bit lower, but generally speaking, they care. And if 3 applicants come in with the exact same application, which won't happen to you because you read a lot and listened to this this session, they will choose the guy or the girl with the highest GMAT. Okay, but if the person with the lower GMAT has a better application, they might choose them. So they definitely care, but still. Okay, someone's asking, should you be blunt about your vision? That's a very good question. I'm definitely not going to tell you on a live YouTube session to lie. I'm not going to tell you that on a phone call as well. But I definitely would think about a few visions which are possible. And then I would probably think about a vision that also works very well with MBAs. Okay, so if your dream is to be a NASA astronaut, to be honest, I don't know how many of them have MBAs. And when admissions look at that, and one of their factors for ranking is finding you a job at the end of the MBA, they'll say, well, he really wants to be an astronaut. It's ambitious, but I don't know if I even can help him. On the other hand, this guy wants to go and work in McKinsey. They're my biggest recruiter. So I don't think you should lie about your vision, but definitely think, what works properly with, with the school as well. Okay, someone's asking me, they've been in one company since their undergraduate degree, okay? And how many bullets should they allocate to that? First of all, I don't know, okay? So I would say your professional experience on your CV should be between half to 2/3 of your page, okay? MBA CVs are usually 1 page. So now you have a minimum half a page. Now, if you only had 1 position, that's going to be 10 bullets. If you've had 5 positions, maybe you need, even in one company, maybe you should allocate 2/3 of the page, and with a smaller font, that will be 3 bullets per position. So I don't really know, but keep in mind at least half of the CV should be bullets about your professional experience, at least half. Okay, someone's asking about the bare minimum of a GMAT score. And again, as a rule of thumb, 50 points below the average should be the minimum of a GMAT score. The problem comes with the GREs. They're really, I've seen very low GREs get in. I've seen 315 GREs get into schools that say their average is 326. So GREs is a bit hard for me to give you like a rule of thumb. GMAT, it's easier. Again, 40, 50 points below the average as a minimum, but that would have to be a fantastic applicant with an amazing application. Okay. I've seen lower as well, but you know, I'm trying not to make you too optimistic. So there's a very good question at the end. By the way, it's the last question. So if anyone has, we can do 3 more questions. Do admissions actually look at the entire application, or do they skim through GMATs and then they, you know, only take the top 20 or something like that? So it's a good question. Obviously, the school will tell you that they look through the entire applications. They allocate a lot of people to look through applications. Okay, the big schools can allocate 20 people per round just to review applications. But the honest truth is, again, I don't know what each person does. They get 100 applications. They need to go through 100 applications in a very short time, in a couple of weeks. And you can do the maths. It's not going to be 5 hours per application. So they might have some buckets, and they might say, okay, this applicant is from this kind of background. I have another 50 applicants with that kind of background. I'll skim through them. I'll invest more than a minute or two, but it won't be an hour. And I'll choose the best applicants out of those 50, and I'll make them a pile of 20. Okay, and one of the factors will be GMAT. But another factor, remember, the second page on my 40-page London Business School application that I used to review for candidates used to be the CV. They'll definitely see your CV. So, and page number 3 was already the essays. Okay, so even if someone's skimming, they're going to read your CV, they're going to read your essays very, very quickly. Okay, I'm not sure if they're going to read every word in the second recommendation if your GMAT is 600 and you're applying to a top school. But if your GMAT is acceptable, yes, they'll read your entire application. And I think that's it. So, a few words of wisdom. 1, GMAT isn't everything. Okay, there's other factors. 2, schools will read your application if the GMAT is reasonable and the other factors are reasonable. And now you can shine in the application. CV, essays, recommendations, online application, good school research, good vision, networking. All these factors will help overcome a low GMAT. And that was it from me. I tried to talk very quickly to cover a lot of things. I hope this session was useful for some of you. Check us out on ARINGO.com. And I wish all of you a lot of success. Thanks, and see you in future sessions like this. Bye.